It's a high-tech conversation.
And a low-tech topic.
Live on the World Wide Web via Zoom. Bench Talk 101.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bench Talk 101. This week, we are joined by James Wright, and he's going to be our guest speaker this week. So without further ado, I don't think James needs much of an introduction. I'm going to pass over to James.
There are a lot of people out there who don't know me, but I am James Wright. I teach hand tool woodworking online, which is a bit of a misnomer because I'm, number one, not a professional woodworker. I don't sell what I make. Number two, I was never actually officially trained. And number three, once you start saying that you do hand tool woodworking, people think you do traditional woodworking. I don't do traditional woodworking. So I'm a bit odd. But that's a good thing, I think. But one of the interesting things that has come up over particularly this last year is social media in woodworking. How does that fit in? Because that's how most people end up coming across it. But it's not woodworking itself. So how does that fit in? So anything you need to say before I jump into it all?
No, James, go for it.
Cool. So for me, social media is my business. When people tell me what do, I say I am a YouTuber. I don't say I'm a woodworker. I don't say I teach hand tool woodworking. I tell people I'm a YouTuber because that is my business. It just happens to be that I YouTube about woodworking. And my passion is in the woodworking. And that makes it very nice because when my business is social media, then my joy can still be woodworking. And especially like today, we're getting ready to go on here and suddenly my phone starts ringing. I'm like, why is my phone ringing? I look down and look at the time and realize, oops, I need to be on here. So I completely zoned in and was loving what I was doing and completely focused. And I actually get to keep that love of what I'm working on because the woodworking isn't my business. The YouTube and the social media is my business. So when you start getting into social media, there are two big classifications. And there are the people who are professionals, and social media is the business. It is what you do. And then there are other people who are, I am a hobbyist, and social media is an extension of who I am, not what I do. And so because of those, there's a big gray area there, and you tend to get a lot of people mixing the two. And if you aren't doing it for business and you're just doing it for the fun of it, doing it for who you are rather than what you do is the way to go. But if you're wanting to make money off of it, you have to separate the two. If you try to mesh the two, you get a really messed up audience. And that is really one of the big key things to social media is knowing your audience. Just like any business, you need to know who is your customer. And that can be very hard because there's a fine line between pigeonholing what your audience is. Like for me, I teach hand tool woodworking. I have education on hand tool woodworking. That is my whole goal of the channel. That is my audience. But there's a lot of other things that I do. I have lots of other hobbies that I would like to do with those, but I have to make sure that all those other hobbies don't bleed into my focus. Now I could make my focus bigger, like Anne of all trades. I had her on a live interview the other day, and she has made her focus Anne of all trades. But she's run into the problem that it is a bit too wide, that she gets an audience member who comes in for this, and then they see this over there and they leave. And so there's a fine line of how big do you make your audience. Unfortunately, for most people, you have to pick that kind of off the bat. And a lot of times I wish that I hadn't pigeonhole myself to hand tool woodworking, but I made the decision not to pigeonhole myself with historical hand tool woodworking. I broadened it out a little bit to hand tools. Part of the time I wish that I would have done relaxation woodworking as opposed to hand tool, because then I could bring in more power tools and things like that. But that's just a decision you have to come to. So with all that being said, now you have figured out how strict do you want to make it, or do you even want to make it strict? Where do you go from there? And usually when you're first starting out, you're not going to be able to build an audience on a business platform. So if you have that pigeonholed hand tool woodworking, you're not going to be able to create a Instagram and YouTube and whatnot and be able to build that. You have to start from where you are, and at a certain point break off from that. And you have to keep that in mind as you're building things. So like, let me take you over to, flip this over, my my Facebook page, this one. So oops, share one more button. There we go. So here's my Facebook page, and this is my personal Facebook page. Oh, look at that. You were calling me. Interesting. I should have answered. And this is what I do. These are my hobbies. Astrophotography, diving, diamond art, and lots of other things. That this is who I am. And when I first started getting started into it, about 1 in every 3 of these was my woodworking, and I would sprinkle those into who I am. I would do the same thing on my Twitter page and my Instagram page, and Twitter's not populating yet. And fill all those out. I've got a kid coming in here. Arthur, I'm on a video right now. Okay, I'll talk to you later, bud. Let me see where I'm at. Skip out. Sorry, kids breaking in. So I would sprinkle those into my life. But at a certain point, you'll have people who will start following you for your woodworking and not really care about your astrophotography and your diving and the other things you have on your social pages. But it's a great way to get your sphere of influence and those just outside your sphere of influence interested in what you do or interested in following it. I've got quite a few friends who follow me who could care less about woodworking, but it kind of interests them. So they want to look at it, and you get those people following you. And once you get to the point where you're kind of running that line of splitting things out, you then need to create variations. You need to create something that is just your woodworking and something that is your life and other things. And in pretty much all platforms, I have my personal account and I have my business account. And in my personal account, I can put whatever I want in there. That is me, that is everything. And a lot of times I'll throw stuff from my business account into my personal account. But my personal account never bleeds into my business account unless there's something that connects to my audience that I'm shooting for. And that is very hard for people because you want to talk about who you are. You want to talk about what is your passion, and your passion isn't always that specific thing you're focusing on. And so you got to guard that. And that's why I'm very, very picky about making sure I have 2 different groups, with the exception of Instagram. Instagram, I don't really go on Instagram for my personal things. There isn't much on there that I want to follow that isn't woodworking. And so I don't have a personal Instagram account because I don't have a desire to post my personal stuff on Instagram. And so in that case, I just have my business account. But let's actually look at, let me pull this up first before I go. There's a few things specifically you have to know when splitting those out, because once you start to do that, even if it's a hobby, the platform wants it to be notified as a business account. And that kind of scares some people because the idea of having a business account means it's a business, right? Well, no, it just means that it's not talking about an individual person. We'll pull this up before I forget, so I can show you guys what I have. And so on Facebook, never, ever, ever create a person, never create an account for your business or your hobby. Number one, it goes against Facebook's terms. And number 2, people look at you like, oh yeah, you have no idea what you're doing because you're trying to create an account. And so you'll see all of these accounts of a person as Joe Schmo's Woodworking, and it looks bad. It isn't designed to work that way, and it will never work as well for you, because what you're trying to do is trying to find more people who want to look at what you do. And if you are creating a person, Facebook doesn't want to find more people to look at the person. Facebook wants you to see what else is happening in the world. And that what else is happening in the world is what you want to be. And that is done through either a page or a group. And with Facebook, I usually say do both. So let me flip this back over to screen share. This one, yes. Nope, not that one. So on my Facebook page here, I have over here we have the group, which is my Wood by Wright hive mind. And on here, this is a group. This is where people can come and meet and talk. And a lot of it's schmoo of people having fun, and some of it is, hey, I have a problem with this, or hey, look at what I just built. And this is where I can start to build the community, because most social media is a one-way street, and I don't want it to be a one-way street. I want to have the two-way communication. I want to see what other people are doing, and I want to learn along with them. And so groups are fantastic for that. But groups aren't a great place to start, because you need to have an audience to be in the group. Your friends and family are not going to want to be in your group because they don't do woodworking. This does not intrigue them. And so usually on Facebook, the first place I'm going to say is create a page. So let me come down here and pull up my page. Where did my page go? Here, let me just search for it. There we go, page. And your page is a one-way street. It's not a place where audience can talk to you, but a page is really a great way to do it. They are a bit old school, and there's a lot in here that is, they're not as, it is kind of looked at as old school, but this is what Facebook wants to put in front of people. Hey, look at that. There's a bench talk going on. That's kind of interesting. This is what Facebook wants to show people. And Facebook will work a bit more to get this content in front of people. If you have this on your personal account, or you create an account just for your account, for your woodworking, Facebook doesn't want to put that in front of people. It doesn't want to put groups in front of people. It wants to put page stuff in front of people. Now you can pay to have the page put in front of people, and that's a whole nother thing. But you're working with the system in that Facebook wants to put that out there. So Facebook is usually the first place that people start, because most people have a Facebook account. It is by far the largest group of audience on the internet. If you want to have the biggest, it's the biggest the net you're trolling through the ocean trying to get people to see your work. From that point on, you need to start thinking about what works for you. What do you like to be on? Because there are so many other groups. You can get onto Reddit, you can get onto Instagram, you can get onto Twitter, you can get onto Pinterest, and the list goes on and on and on. And there are people who try to be on every account. It doesn't work. Unless you have someone who's professionally running things for you and posting on them. It's rare to be able to do more than 3, maybe 4 accounts well. And so don't try and do that much. Don't try and spread yourself out thin. Now, one of the things you may want to do is go on to 8 or so and save your account, such as my Twitter account. I've got my Twitter account. I don't do anything at all with my Twitter account because I really don't like Twitter. But sometime in the future, I may want to do that. So I have my Wood by Wright Twitter account. I don't have anything on there, but it's there. I may use it sometime in the future. I don't intend to right now, but I'm saving that name because it has happened to me a couple times, like on Pinterest. I didn't go onto Pinterest and save my account, and there's another account on there called Wood by Wright Woodworking on Pinterest. And there's nothing I can do about that. They got there first. So it's one of the things of go and make those accounts, even if you're not intending on using them, just so you can save it for the future. But don't try and do them all. Start with one at a time and learn that system. What I've had the best luck with is actually Instagram. I kind of like Instagram for woodworking. It is, sorry, go back. Sorry, trying to pull it up for you and show you some of the things in there. Let's click on the right button here. Instagram is quick and easy, and it has a good demographic. Why is it not pulling up? Instagram.com. I don't know if I'm able to show you my Instagram. Yeah, the other thing about Instagram is designed to work on your phone. It's not designed to work on the computer, and that's a bit annoying with it. Yeah. So
Instagram has been playing up all day.
What's that?
Instagram has been playing up all day today.
Has it? I haven't been on there. And so Instagram is a great place to get out there because it's very easy. Anyone can make a picture and you can modify it and tweak it and make it look good. But it takes a little bit to actually understand it because there's a system to it. It's something you have to think through and see what works. And each audience is a little bit different. So get on there and follow people, and see what intrigues you. It's not always about what you want to put out. The content you want to put out, the woodworking you want to put out, that's important, but how it gets put out is very important. And with that, it is what works well for the system. And the best way to see that is to scroll through a feed on whatever account you're on and see what catches your mind. And when something suddenly you stop scrolling, if ever I find myself stopping and scrolling on, I'm going to look at the picture or whatever pops up and say, why did I stop? Because we never think about the why. We think about what's there. We think about the content itself. And so until you understand why you stopped, you're never going to be learning. So what I was doing originally when I first got onto Instagram is every time I found myself stopping scrolling, I'd take a screenshot with my phone. And I wouldn't think about it much, but then later on I would go back and I'd look through my screenshots and I'd have, a dozen or so screenshots on there. And I would think through what made me stop on these, what were the intriguing things, and then try to implement that. It's never something you're going to get on and do well right off the bat. It is a learning process no matter where you're at. So work through things and try to learn step by step. Just a second. Hey, bud, I'm on a video right now. Okay. Yeah, I'll be out of it. Yes, tell your siblings you get popsicles. The fun of being a stay-at-home parent. Yeah, they're actually the reason why I'm in woodworking is because I became a stay-at-home dad and I need to work in the shop and have them around. But now I do this. So them being home is why I'm here. Okay, learning about what you're doing. You need to be very, very conscious about what triggers you, because if it triggers you, there's going to be other people out there that also get triggered by it. And if you can implement that and work on it, your social media will be far more productive. And that goes very well across the board, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, everything out there. The next thing I'm going to tell you is that there are two big different categories when it comes to social media, and everything is in one of those between the two, and that is text and images. And images are pictures and videos. Text is text, and different people are drawn to different groups. I'm going to tell you, try and focus on one or the other, and unless you're that rare individual that is good at both, which is very few people. Most people really gravitate towards text or they really gravitate towards images. Try and focus on one or the other, such as Reddit. What's the other? Reddit, Twitter. There's another one. Any of the main servers on like Discord and Discourse. Those tend to be very text-based information sources. And if you are drawn to text-based information, then definitely go on there. You will be able to understand it much quicker. You'll be able to integrate into the system much quicker. For me, I am hyper dyslexic. I'm reading is an incredible chore for me. And so for me, I don't do much of anything in the text-based systems because the amount of work I would have to put into them is not worth the benefit I would get out of them. I wouldn't ever become natural in the group because it would be something difficult for me to do. Now, that being said, my wife is all about text-based. She doesn't really care much about images. And she is actually starting to do some of the implementation side of that on other text-based groups. Go back to my notes. I got off course again. Cool. So in whatever group you're going to get into, you have to understand that group. So do one at a time. Don't try and implement 4 groups at once. Get one into it, do it for several months until it becomes normal and until you've created a system. And the first few months, no matter what group you're getting into, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you have to create a system and stick to that system. Whether or not that is, on Instagram, I really try to put out 1 picture every day, or my goal is actually 7 pictures a week. And so on days like today, I put out 3. Some days I won't put out any. I try and do 7 a week. That is my system. I've developed that for what I can do. It's not the best system. It'd be better if I could do 2 or 3 pictures every day and actually do them ahead of time and schedule them out. I just haven't gotten that good at it yet. But create a system, whatever it is, create your particular system of when you're going to put things out, what types of things you're going to be putting out, and how they get put out. Such as on YouTube, for me, on my main channel, I have my regular Saturday build. And then on the second channel, I have the Saturday build, the Tuesday live, and the Thursday education. And people know that that's what they're going to get on those particular days in that particular system, and how it's created. The look of it is the same. The copy that goes with it is the same. And there is a standard system to it. Once you start to get a preliminary system down and you start to stick to it, that's when you then can add in another social media group. And which one that is, that depends on you, depends on your audience. One that I really want to get into is Pinterest. There are a lot of female woodworkers on there, and that's an audience that is really growing right now. And I've been trying to work with that. My wife and I have been talking about that. The problem with Pinterest is I don't get Pinterest. I've tried it 5 or 6 times, and it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not who I am. My wife loves Pinterest. She goes on there and she scrolls at night, and she has all these pin boards that she's on, and I just haven't quite gotten it. But I want to do more on there, and that is a wide open field I'd like to get into. So that's probably where I'm going to be going next, but doing that more with the help of my wife. Systems to test that. Cool. So then the next thing, once you start getting into them, and from my point of view, I'm assuming this is someone who is a hobbyist woodworker who wants to do more, not particularly a YouTuber. And so I'm kind of viewing YouTube as one of these platforms. From my point of view, it was YouTube first, and then all the other platforms came. But for most people, it is where they are, what group they're currently on, and then the other platforms. Once you start getting a few of them down, you need to find one that is your baby, one that you respond to everything that comes through it. You have a really well-developed system. You have something that is exactly what you want. For me, that is my second channel on YouTube. Wood by Wright How To is my baby. That's where I pour my passion. That's where 80 to 90% of my time is at. The main Wood by Wright channel, I broke that off because I was realizing that my audiences were kind of 2 different things. There were the people on YouTube who like to watch woodworking being done. They don't want to learn it. They don't want to see the interesting tools. They just want to see someone working with their hands and relax and hear the ASM sounds. And then there's the other people who come on there who want to learn. And I was trying to create videos for both audiences on one channel, and it wasn't working. So I ended up splitting the 2 channels off, and I have the main channel, which is the bigger of the 2 channels because most of my viewers are there for the ASM. They're just wanting to watch it. But my passion was in the demonstration and the explanation. And so I created Wood by Wright How To be the one that I really focus on. And so for me, the main channel is another one of my ancillary audiences. And I've seen several other social media people do that on other platforms. I'm trying to think of, it was one of the boat builders. I can't remember. But he has 2 Instagram accounts
Leo.
for one project. What's that?
Is it Leo, the Tally Ho project?
Is it Leo? I don't think it's Leo that I'm talking about with that one. I don't remember. But he had 2 different Instagram accounts. for the same project. And one of them was just updates on what is going on. And the other one was the fun and the experiment and the education and what he liked to do. And so there were some people who just wanted to see what current state is the boat on. And the other one was wanting to actually follow through in all of the education. Maybe it was Acorn to Arabella. I'll have to go look at that. And so that is a fairly common thing, is that you'll find that you get an audience on a particular channel that is there for something that isn't quite what you want. And then you can split it off and do separate things on there. And it's always a balancing act of, you don't want to split it off into multiple different things if the audiences can coexist. And if they can work together, then keep it as a whole, because then you have a bigger audience, and whatever platform you're on views it as a bigger group and will put it into more places. Yeah, for YouTube, let me pull this up before I forget. On where is it? This one. Accounts. Let me bring this up. On YouTube, I actually have 10 different YouTube channels that I run. And part of that is because YouTube works for me phenomenally. I love YouTube. Let me go to the main page here. And on YouTube, I've got, I keep Wood by Wright as my main thing. Every video I watch is from Wood by Wright. And so here you can see, these are the types of things that I watch. The other boats that I'm being built, video that just came out today. And so there are some building things on here, but there are a lot of things that aren't woodworking. And this kind of confuses YouTube, because my account on Wood by Wright is following things that are not woodworking. And that is not a good way to do it. And that's another reason why I split it off, is I want all of my interests to still be on there. And so my main Wood by Wright 2 channel, that follows all of the woodworking groups. That is, when I watch a woodworking video, I watch it on that channel, so that YouTube knows this channel is then connected with these types of sources. And the same thing happens on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, is you want that channel, that page, to be associated with other similar channels and pages, so that the platform learns this is what it's about. And so I have on here, let me pull this back up. I have on here several different groups that I try to watch multiples at the same time. I try to watch things that do with each particular channel. So if I come over here to my accounts, I've got my personal account, and this is what I should be watching things on, but I forget about it. This is an old real estate channel that I've started a while ago. My daughter's woodworking channel. This is the one where I put a lot of my fun stuff. I have one for the family and what we do, and then Wood by Wright and the main Wood by Wright, and then I have a few more channels that I follow. So what I should be doing is, every time I watch a video, I should switch to one of these other accounts that then correspond with what that is. So this one is my family's travel and vacation and that type of thing. So I should switch to that one to watch any particular video that would correspond with it. I'm not very good at that, because a lot of times I'll just sit down on my phone and I'll just start watching videos, and then I forget, oops, I'm on the wrong account. I should be watching with the other one. And that has harmed my main Wood by Wright channel, because it has become my main watching group. And it's one of those things in the back of my brain that I've got on the to-do list, that one of these days I need to go through and unsubscribe from all the channels on Wood by Wright, and then resubscribe to them on the other channels that they would correspond with. But that's a lot of work. Yeah, I'm running close to the end of what I was planning on talking about. So if there's anything that you guys wanted me to hit before I
you're okay, James. You can carry on.
Okay. Go back on to, oh yeah, website. There's the other thing. I skipped over that at the beginning. Whatever you do in all of these groups, you need to have something that is yours, because whatever you do on social media does not belong to you. Every group, every page, every channel does not belong to you. And at any point, that page can, oops, accidentally knock you off the account. And it's happened to quite a few friends of mine where I had a friend who's at 200,000 subscribers. And suddenly one day he logged on and found out his channel didn't exist anymore. YouTube had accidentally deleted it. He was able to get it back. But yeah, that's one of those things you never know. It doesn't belong to you. It doesn't, there is no reason, there is no right you have to what you put on those accounts. And so you want to have something that is yours. And so from that, you really need to create a website. And even if it's a hobby, creating a website is a great way to do that, because it gives you a hub that you can direct everything to. Most of the time, if I'm on one of my social pages and I want to direct someone to see something, I'm going to direct them to the website. For even some of my YouTube videos, rather than directing directly to YouTube, I'll take them to the post I have on my website that then has links to YouTube and the text right out on there. Most of the time, I'm going to send them straight to the YouTube video because they want to see the YouTube video. But if I'm just trying to get information to someone, I'll send them to the website link I have on there. And the website is yours, as long as you're backing it up and you have that content. It's something that stays yours. So here's mine, woodbywright.com. I use Squarespace. It's a really simple platform. And I probably should come through and redo some things on here. I haven't updated the main page, but on here, I've got my blog. I've got all of my links, and this is something that you'll end up coming to, is your affiliate links. About half of these are affiliates and half of them aren't. And so if anyone's saying, hey, what plane should I get? I can send them a link to this page. And that way, if they link on one of these, often I might get a kickback from that. Some of them, yes, some of them, no, but these are the ones that I would generally suggest. And I have this base that no matter what I do, this is mine. This is something that, as long as I maintain the website, it is my base. And that is the one big downside to most social media sites, is that it's not yours. And one day it may disappear, or the rules may change, or the algorithm behind it will change, and everything's different. And that, the algorithm, oh my word. It used to be that most of the sites would update the algorithm every so often, and it would be something that would be, oh, the algorithm just changed. We all then can learn about the algorithm and modify our adaptation to it. That doesn't happen anymore. Every site out there is just constantly, slowly tweaking and changing the algorithm. There are little changes here and there that just change how things are done, or what is the best method, or how do you get the links in there. And for a lot of people, that is an absolute pain, because whatever system you create for each individual social media, it will always be changing. It will always have something new you have to do to it. And if you finally get a system down that really works for you and it's clicking and you're getting things up right on time, then the system's going to change and you have to adapt to it. Personally, I kind of like that, because it keeps me on my toes. It means that I have to be always learning. I have to always be, watching the blogs and videos and things that are closely tracking it. And I get an idea about, hey, this is where YouTube is going. Maybe I should start doing that. Like right now, it is thumbnails. You can see live data from any changes you make. So you can actually change your thumbnail 4 or 5 times to see which one gets the better audience. And then you can kind of stick with that. And I've actually been going back through some of my old videos and changing the thumbnail on them to see, hey, can I get a little bit better audience with that? Because if you don't do that, everyone else will be, and soon you'll be left in the dust. So it is a bit of a rat race, but that's social media. There is no way around that. You can't just assume that what you're going to get takes off. And on that note, don't ever, ever, ever try to get that viral video, that viral post that goes wild. If you chase virality, you will always miss, and people will see that you're trying to chase it. And it becomes very obvious that someone is trying to do something that's not going to quite click. Unless you are, a social face influencer, who that's their business, is trying to chase virtual viral clicks. It's not going to work for the YouTuber and not going to work for the woodworker. So all of this, I really haven't been talking much about woodworking and how to do woodworking, because this is a completely different ball of wax. This is something that is 100% different. And if you can kind of separate the two in your brain, then woodworking stays fun. It stays something that's not the business. It's not what you're focusing on. And there are a lot of times where social media just isn't fun. It is a lot of staying on top of it. It's a lot of staying with the system and getting it up and going. And it becomes work because it's not where the fun is. There are very few people who do social media because it's fun. And if you are doing that because right off the bat, several of my YouTube channels are fun. They are something that I do for the fun of it. And that's great. I try and keep them that way. But if I ever try making something from them and being more than just my having fun and putting it out there, then it becomes a business, and then it becomes work. And there's no way around that. If you're doing something for money, it will eventually become work and you will lose the fun out of it. So try not to make the woodworking the business. Try to make the social media the business. And you'll find that you do a lot more woodworking because you can get away from the social media. So that's what I had. What do you guys have?
Well, cheers, James. Thanks for a brilliant talk there about social media and being a socially distant woodworker. So we'll move on to the questions part of the talk. And if there's anyone who hasn't joined us before, then if you pop your name in the chat, then I'll call for your turn to ask James a question, and you can unmute yourself and ask James yourself. So I think Tim Greenfield already said he'd put his name in for a question quite early on. So over to you, Tim.
Yeah, well, James, thank you for that brilliant talk. I actually learned quite a lot from what you said. And actually, you did answer a few of my questions I was going to ask you anyway. I'm actually starting my own YouTube channel. I'll tell you a little bit about me. It all started from Matt Esley. He put out the world's fastest dovetail. And I beat him fair and square. I won his saw and his marking knife, and I made that video viral. Within the first few weeks, I had about 17,000 views on it. Now, I know views is not the best thing for getting my name out there, but it kind of sparked that a lot of people wanted to watch me. So I've now started my own channel. What would be the best advice for a newbie such as myself to get started? Is there any sort of do's and don'ts that you've learned throughout the whole process?
With YouTube, the best plan of action is create a system of what you're posting and when you're posting it, and stick to it. Yeah. And for the first 3 or 4 months, don't worry about the quality. Don't worry about, is it what is best for YouTube? I mean, try and you make good stuff. Try and make what you want, but don't focus on that. Focus on being consistent. Focus on the regular upload system. And then once you get to the point where it's a bit of it's what you do, it's just normal thing. On Thursday, I do this. Yes. Then you can start to really focus on, how can I make things better with YouTube? A lot of people really focus on the thumbnail and the title and the demographics and all that right off the bat. And they get very quickly burnt out because they don't have a system that's just a part of their daily routine. And so if you get that daily routine down, then you have a much better chance of sticking with it, and someday something really takes off and does well.
Yeah. And how often would you recommend doing something like that? I actually have a full-time job,
Mhm.
9 till 5 every day of the week, and sometimes it's only weekends that I've got available to do my woodworking, to do what I love best. I'm actually trying to evolve my business as the workshop box shop. That's my Instagram. I've obviously messaged you a few times on there. That's what I would like to bring, quality grade jewelry boxes. So that's what I want to kind of bring to the table, that high quality.
Well, it depends on the videos you want. The gold standard is once a week.
Yeah.
However, if you go and look at a lot of the big name channels, the ones that really do well, they might put them out once a month or less. And part of that is because quality takes time. If you
Yeah.
really want a good, sharp video that's really well thought through and scripted and edited, it takes time.
It does.
And that's one of the things that I've made the decision to stop, to back off on, is I don't script my videos. Everything is off the top of my head. That saves me about 50% of my time.
Yeah.
The downside of that is my videos will never do as well as a channel that is. Like for me, comparison, me and Rex Kruger, the two of us are really, really similar. We're in almost identical things. His videos will always do better than mine do. But he only puts out one a week or one every other week because he focuses on the quality. He scripts everything out. Every shot is detailed, and he does a really bang up job on it. For me, I put out 4 videos a week on my 2 main channels. And so I can put out more content, but my videos are never going to get as big. They're never going to go as wide. So that's something you have to ask yourself is what do you want?
Yeah. For your viewer, looking at your channel, I like that realism, that sort of unscripted, go at it. This is the real world. But then obviously, like you said in what you said before, it's that audience that you're aiming for. What's the bigger audience? I suppose that's another factor in it. But, really, really good what you've just said. And I shall take that on board.
Cheers, Tim.
Thank you, mate.
Over to you, Jim.
James, thank you. Excellent. Really, really enjoyed the talk. I've got a million and one. Y'all seem to be locked on to Shrenik. I don't know why. Am I?
If James talks, then you'll see him.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I'll talk here.
It's because you're keeping quiet, James. I still can't see you. There you go. There you are. Yeah. I've got a million and one things, and I just it would go on for hours and hours. And but you've opened my eyes on a lot of things. And I've always thought of. I've actually changed my whole from an audience point of view, looking at YouTube from the audience side. And one of the things you said really struck home is the making sure that you do, even if it's just once a week or once a month, you stick to that. And it's almost as if YouTube is becoming the daily viewing of the world. And that struck me over the lockdown much more, because I found myself turning on YouTube rather than turning on the television and watching BBC or ITV or whatever, if you're in the States, CBS, whatever. And I think the way that the point you're making there is it structures a guide, if you like, for everybody to look at, but they overlay that with choosing the genre that they want, so they can micromanage their viewing, and they subscribe to things that catch their eye. And when it comes out on a regular basis, I now, it's Sunday, it's got to be Tally Ho, or so on and so forth, and it comes up, and I look forward to that. And then there becomes a Sunday night viewing, which takes you through the whole of the after work, if you like, or after the workshop type thing. So I think that's a critical thing that I've suddenly realized, and as such, that becomes the media content. Yeah. Is that the interpretation that the reasoning behind why you suggest a timely?
Yeah, and that's really one of the big reasons why once a week is the gold standard, because most people are on a weekly routine, and so if it always comes on at Tuesday at 4 p.m.,
Yeah.
You know,
So it pops up on somebody who's subscribed to you can see it regularly. So therefore it becomes the content. It is now becoming the, should we say, viewing content.
Yeah.
Where we went through a couple of channels on terrestrial TV to satellite TV to streaming, and now to content streaming when a micro managed by the audience themselves.
Yeah.
I see Instagram, and correct me, this is one, it's actually a question, but I'll phrase it this way. I see it as your advertising. So it's your advertising of what's going to come along and what might interest someone. Oh, I must remember to look at James's program on Sunday because he's Instagram just billboard, if you like. So it's kind of like putting up an advert for the dance on Saturday, but it's not the dance. It's that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there are two different ways to do it. Number one, if it can be your main media creation, that you spend as much time actually creating the content for that as you do creating the content for another place. And there are quite a few people who do that, like Ann of all trades for particular. Instagram is just as important to her as YouTube.
Right.
And so she spends just as much time creating the content for Instagram as she does creating the content for YouTube. And that works out where a lot of people, they have their main things such as YouTube, and then everything else is a way to drive people to that. The standard business method is that your website is the hub, and everything drives to the website. And so that's the way a lot of content creators do something, is their blog post is their main content for the week, and everything else is a feeder for that content. So the YouTube channel is the video that goes at the top of the blog post. And then the Instagram is the pictures that go into the content of it. And so there's a bunch of different ways to format that. And there are quite a few people who do that as you know, Twitter and Instagram are the advertisements for the video of this is what's coming up. Oh, here's a sneak peek from behind the scenes. So it kind of depends on how you want to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed dynamically. I mean, the monetization of everything is changing. I mean, I know a lot of YouTubers were you know, smiling all the way to the bank for quite some time, and then all of a sudden they said enough of this and just changed the dynamics of the whole thing. And looking at the geek stats and all of that, people didn't understand how it's actually changed. Whereas now a lot of people have adapted to that change. And I know Instagram, when I first started, I had like 70 followers, and then it shot up to 13,000, and then it just stopped, and they changed the algorithm, and I still haven't found out what they changed it to, because I haven't moved since then. But excellent, thanks. I won't take up. I'll ask you a couple of things I want to pick your brains about at some point in the future, but I won't take up all the questions. But thanks very much for tonight. It's been eye-opening.
Well, along that line, with the things changing, one of the questions that I get quite often is it possible for a new woodworker to break into YouTube? Because it has a feeling that all of these channels have been created, and you're not going to be able to break into it. And that is one of the things that YouTube is really trying to fix. And they're doing a very good job of it right now, in that every now and then someone from the bottom starts popping up, and it is very, very possible. But the problem is, right off the bat, you have to work with YouTube and get associated with other things. And the best way you can do that on YouTube or on any other platform is collaborations.
Right.
And when you're starting to look for collaborations on any platform, the standard system is the lower channel or the lower group, the one that's starting to get into it, contacts the bigger channel and says, hey, I want to do a collaboration. Here are 3 ideas. And it's the lower channel's it's the lower channel's job to do the legwork of coming up with the idea and maybe doing some of the work for the bigger channel. So the bigger channel says, hey, I get a video out. I have to do a little less work. It's a win-win situation. I get to help someone else out. And that's the trade-off of, I can give someone else my audience if they do a little bit of the work for me. And so for a couple channels that I've done that with, where I've talked to someone else and say, hey, we're going to split a build. I'll do the putting it all together and I'm going to send it to you. And then all you're going to do is the carving and finishing. And that way we can show both halves of it. They only have to do half the work and they can get a video out quickly and easily. And so it's the lower person then connecting the higher person and working back and forth that way, actually giving them something of value so that they can put it out there. And honestly, almost every channel out there, with a few exceptions, is more than willing to do a collaboration if there's a good idea and you help them out with some of the work.
Gotcha. Well, that's something I hadn't even thought about, but and not that I want to do it commercially at all, but it's just, you know.
No, but they are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I do collaborations. I try to do at least one a month that I enjoy doing because it's fun to hang out with someone else and get some other ideas and just be part of the community, socially distanced.
Yeah, well, exactly. Right. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Cheers.
Cheers, Jim. Over to Paul Smithies. If he's still around.
I'm still around.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, James. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks very much. Great talk. And I actually did some of your carving, you know, when you did the coat hooks ages ago with the Celtic knots.
Oh, the one that had the 3 different hooks?
Yeah, the one where you have the Celtic knots and you have the hooks inside them. And
Oh, okay,
I contacted you on the Instagram just to sort of say thank you. This is what I've done. I was mightily impressed that you personally responded. You know, that meant a lot to me at the time. It's like, oh my God, he's responded. But I mean, how do you keep up with all these sort of like constant messages and everything else?
It's part of the system. And a lot of times when I talk about the system, people think about when you post things. It's also about how do you respond to comments, and you know, how do you come up with ideas, and how do you organize the ideas, and when do you shoot the content. And part of that is the audience interaction. So I have standard times throughout the day that I will answer email. I have standard times throughout the day I look at Instagram and go comments on there. I have standard times a day that I go through YouTube comments. And so that's just part of my daily routine. But yeah, it's just part of the system.
Yeah, well, as I say, and just using Pritt stick and a photocopy to go over the top of the carving is just genius for somebody like me who's would take, you know, sort of hours to draw it. Find a design, photocopy it, and paste it on them and carve through it. Brilliant.
Yeah.
As I say, much appreciated on your channel and everything. You know,
Well,
really enjoy it.
Thanks.
Okay, and I'm done.
All right, cheers, Paul. Over to Will Graham.
Hey, hi everybody. James, you've been I retired recently, but I've been getting ready for it. And one of the things is I've been always wanting to do woodworking. I've done it in the past, but far more seriously. Your channel's been a great source of ideas and where I should focus and how to get things done. I didn't know you were going to be on today until last night, and I'd ordered from your video on the wood stabilization, the kit from Amazon. It arrived just before this call, and I got it set up and stuff like that. So, and you know, I kind of got this going, and it is a prototype for a mallet for wood carving. I want to get into wood carving, and I want to do a stabilized version of it. And I've got a stack of stabilization projects, but it's this. Your impact on how I'm thinking about the projects and going forward is really good because you're clear, and you're very honest about it from what I can tell, because you tell us what your associations are and stuff like that, that I'm getting a fairly unbiased opinion of stuff, especially when it comes to like purchases or techniques. So yeah, I do appreciate that. some of the comments you made on today's is kind of insightful, actually. So I wanted to thank you for that. My compressor or the vacuum just enough oil just to get it to the minimum line. I got to go out and buy oil after this. But
you
yeah,
don't want that to
thank you
overheat.
No, but it works. So I'm going to have some fun with that. But just to say thank you and keep it up, because you're one of the people that I watch Rex, I watch yourself, and a bunch of other people, and it is helping. You guys are the new tutors or masters. We don't get out. The apprentice system's gone. Mostly.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Will. Over to Rusty.
Hey, James.
Hey, Rusty, how's it going?
Pretty good. I have a question about a particular project, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you did this best chisel test, and the amount of work that's gone into it is just absolutely insane.
Don't forget the plane irons as well.
What's that?
Don't forget the plane irons as well.
I haven't gotten to the plane irons. I read some of the documentation on the chisels, and that was enough for me. How did you decide to spend hours and hours and buy this? I don't remember the name of the mechanism that measures the sharpness of the chisel.
Well, that goes back to the separation of work from hobby. Is that one of my superpowers is that people often look at boring tasks and don't want to do them because they're boring. I look at them and think, ooh, that would be a challenge. I want to do that. And so, things like hand planing a board by hand. But honestly, diving into the statistics and the numbers and the spreadsheets, that really scares a lot of people. For me, that is something that's my passion. I enjoy that. So that's
I'm actually
fun.
a professor of statistics, and that's why I see how much of a monumental task that was.
I'm actually in the middle of expanding the chisel test. I have 6 of them here, and I'm waiting for 2 more to show up.
So it was
We'll see how that goes.
it sounded like it would be useful information, but would be too hard for people, and that's why nobody did it. And you figured, yeah, I'll spend untold hours checking how quickly a chisel gets dull.
Well, the thing that really flips my trigger is that there are a lot of videos out there of this chisel's better than that chisel, and here's why: it feels better. And it feels, and this one seems to do better, or yeah, this one's better in my opinion. That just never sits right with me. I want numbers. I want to have statistical proof that this one is better than that one because it's been measured in this way. And I found it to be one of the things that was very lacking in the community, is just not having that statistical number on certain things. And so that's something I find the joy in, of being able to do that.
So my personal appreciation of this test came because I just bought 2 sets of chisels, and they came out, I think, second in your test, but by far cheaper than the first, the Ashley Isles chisels. And I felt so vindicated that here's somebody proving this. And the funny story, Jim was giving me a thumbs up. The reason I bought those is because Jim was saying, wow, those are great. And by the way, you should see how they sharpen them.
Yeah, but I didn't need a bloody spreadsheet to work it out.
No, he didn't. No. And I hate that he was right about it too. That's no, but it was, yeah. I'm glad you did it. I know who to go to for a monumental amount of work that I would like to benefit from, but there's no chance in hell I'm going to be doing this. How many hours did you put into it? Do you know?
The chisel test, I have no idea. Let's see, it would have been
like 7 marathons worth.
It was with the chisel, it was an hour per angle per chisel per test. So that meant 9 hours per chisel. No, it was 12 hours per chisel.
And you
to
had
do it.
8 chisels?
And I think it was 16. No, it was,
Okay. So close to 200 hours.
it was a lot. Yeah. Yeah. The
Okay.
test I'm currently into is testing hand planes. We want to know, does bed angle statistically change tear out? Does the
With
chip
Jeff's-
breaker,
with
does
Jeff's
the sharpness, and
with
mouth
Jeff's-
opening and all those things?
with Jeff's adapter thingy
Yeah.
for the bed.
So I'm actually working with Jeff. Here, let me pull it out. I've got.
This is Jeff Warshawski, who did a talk a few months back.
Yeah.
So we're working on this right here. So this is a plane iron, a hawk iron, in a jig, and this is designed to go into a mill. So a vertical mill. And so the mill stays put and the board underneath runs by it. And so we can adjust the angle on this. We can adjust the chip breaker, and then we can put a scale on the board to see how much force does it take at each angle. And then later on, we can attach a mouth to this and test that out. And then we can test skew cutting. And there's a lot of other things we want to actually do and have measured numbers. The problem we're having right now is actually setting up the mill, the jig, because I want to get a microscope. I've got my lens set up for that. And so this is actually a microscope head with a 10 times element. So I can, the field of view in this is thinner than a piece of paper. And I can fill the entire width of a 4K screen at 1/32 of an inch. So we can get right on the tip as it's doing the work and seeing what that goes into. So that's gonna be fun.
I'm absolutely amazed. Going back to chisels, which was simple, 200 hours for the rest of us to know what to buy. Thank you. I'm done.
Cheers, Rusty. I think it seemed like Jim might have had something to offer on that there. I don't know if he did.
It's a bit like Leonardo da Vinci inventing flight and coming up with all the statistics and everything, and then the Wright brothers coming on themselves and all that. I'm just going to chuck it down a field. It's I'm not entirely sure of the anyway, but I'm going to go and have a look now deeper into the statistics because I too find that quite fascinating. But there's nothing like trying it and seeing it. I think I think it varies because it doesn't necessarily, just because it comes out scientifically, mean that you're going to be comfortable with one tool or another.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not questioning your data. I'm questioning the validity of the reasoning behind doing it. But I'll leave it at that.
On that note, there's two things that really bug me about the data. Number one is that I'm testing one chisel of each one. And there's always going to be variance between them. And so part of me really wants to go out and buy 30 chisels, purchased from different locations at different times for each one of them, and do that whole test 30 times to see what the aggregate average are on each of the chisels. But then there's the other half of it that comes to me that, when you buy that chisel that just feels good in the hand, it doesn't matter if it's any quality at all, but if it feels good to you and your brain is saying this is fun, that's what's important.
And also you'd have to look at, for instance, like the old Narek story where you have to grind it 3 times to get it to work, so it is it does, there's so many, I think there's too many variables to get an empirical answer. But great fun though.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Starts a lot of arguments.
It does. Yeah. So I thought sharpening was a problem.
James, wasn't your statistical test meant to stop arguments?
Yes.
There's no way of stopping arguments when it comes to hand tools.
This is like the Alice through the microscope version of rabbit holes. It really is. Anyway, next question, please.
Well, over to Scott Anderson.
Hi, James.
Hey, Scott.
I think I'm just about to jump into that rabbit hole and offer up an argument. On your plane testing, I'm assuming you're only going bevel down with the irons.
On this particular series of it, yes, because we're just testing cutting angle and chip breaker and mouth opening. But we do have plans to eventually create one to go bevel down. The problem with that is we have to have a jig that can go at such a low angle, because it have to get down to about 12 degrees on the mill, and most mills won't do that.
So you will do it eventually with bevel up, like for a miter plate?
Eventually, we have to create a whole new apparatus for it.
It's something that kind of fries my brain a little bit, is bevel up and bevel down. There's obviously a huge difference in the way it cuts. So I'm interested in that. Obviously, you can't go into too much detail because you're still doing it.
We will learn some about it, because we'll be able to go from 30 degrees, we'll be able to go from 35 degrees up to, I think we're going to go up to 60 degrees. And so with that angle difference, one of the things we'll know is the amount of force needed to push it through, so we can actually measure the force on the board. And so that will then tell us, we'll see a graph and we'll see, does it trend down one way or the other? One of the big problems that I'm trying to wrap my brain around is, how do I statistically measure tear out?
Fantastic.
And I haven't quite found a method to say this tear out is a level 6 and this tear out is a level 4 on this particular board at this particular time.
It's obviously then depending on the material as well, because
and then all of those steps, then we'd have to go through and do it with a cherry and a oak and a pine and see variations in different types of wood. And
thank you.
Cheers, Scott. I think we've got a few more questions come through. Matthias.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much, James. Very interesting. This is perhaps more of a comment than a question, because I'm not on social media, so it was a hugely interesting insight, and I was very glad to hear it. But I'm not going to be joining anytime soon, I'm afraid. But also, something that's not for everyone. What you were saying in passing about there being two groups of people, the ones who are more image-based and the ones who are more text-based. And I am very much in the text-based camp. I'm a 600 words a minute reader. So for me, trying to get a certain amount of information out of a video, it's going to take me maybe 45 minutes. I can get the same thing out of a text in 5 or 10. So the equation is easy. It's videos are sometimes more instructional because you can actually see things being done. But I find it difficult to find time to sit down and watch them with a tranquil mind. I'm always sort of thinking, shouldn't I be down in my shop playing a board? But it was hugely interesting to, as it were, to get the view from the other side, because you take yourself, we're all inclined to take ourselves as the norm for how people are. You judge others by yourself. And it's always so fascinating when all of a sudden you are reminded, no, that is not how the world is made up. So thank you very much. It was, I don't really have a question, but it was, I wanted to say thank you because quite a few things you said today were, if not eye-openers, at least they made me think, and I always appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, there's actually, that's one of the interesting things in my line of work is I tend to focus a lot on the philosophy of woodworking.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people and there are channels that focus on how do we do something the absolute best. And I often fall into that same problem of focusing on, let's work on the most perfect way of possibly doing it, the best way. And I tend to have to remind myself, perfection is not a location, it's a direction. You head towards it, but you will never get there. And I think we do the same thing with the way people learn and the way we present information, in that we are so used to looking at it from the way we want to do it that I have to constantly remind myself that there are 100 different ways to get this information across.
Hmm.
And if I create a video on it, there could be 75 other videos on YouTube talking about the exact same thing, and only one of them works for that particular person.
Yeah.
And then you start mixing into it the text information and the way it's said and how it's presented. And there are an infinite number of possibilities out there for getting information across. And we've only scratched the surface of it.
Indeed. Anyway, thank you very much.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you.
Matthias. James, do we have time for a few more questions?
Oh yeah, I'm golden.
Yeah?
Lots of time today.
Okay. Over to Chester. Chester Spear.
Hello, James. Good talk.
Hey.
I'm intrigued by a lot of what you said, as I have a YouTube channel and I put out information, but my end result, I think, is different than yours or Rob Cosman's or other people's, in that it's not a business for me. I only do it. I started doing it mostly because of COVID and everything, and started sharing information online and as a way to reach out to people, and but not necessarily as a money maker. Now, I have a sister-in-law who has a large following on YouTube and doing interior design and that sort of thing, baking, that sort of thing, and very professional website and all of that. And I see how much energy she puts into it. And I don't know specifically the amount of money that she has in it. Just recently, YouTube has approached me about monetizing my information that I put online. And I fought that mostly during the election because I was afraid that, some of the advertisements would be something that I disapproved of. So I didn't choose to monetize. And then I thought, well, let me just see what some of the videos are doing. And so there was a couple, because I didn't want the advertisements, because I didn't want people thinking that I'm doing this for money. In other words, I'm not pushing one tool, Veritas or Lee Nielsen or something else. I wanted to have a clean slate so that somebody could look at my videos and say, well, these are just his impressions of the tool. Not necessarily saying this one is better. It's just that this is how this one's acting. This one is how this one's acting. And I do a lot of tool comparisons. And I have to admit, I was totally amazed with the amount of work and the results that you came up with on your plane iron study. I mean, it was mind-boggling. It was so mind-boggling that it was very difficult to take it all in. You had to kind of look at it and say, okay, here are the basic things that I can take from it. What are the end results? But when you start to get into the minutia of it, you start to shut down, basically, and go, this is too much now. I'm lost in it. So I found that I have to compliment you on your perseverance through that, because I couldn't have even attempted that from beginning to end. As well, when I'm doing comparisons of planes on my YouTube channel, I noticed that it's not just the sharpness of the blade, the angle of the blade, the chip breaker, how flat the back of the chip breaker is, how it meets up with the blade, how much support is on the back of the blade. All of those things vary, including even the handle of the plane, the size of your hand, the way you hold on to it, the direction of the angle of the handle on a plane. If the new Stanleys are a little higher versus the Lee Nielsen, which is more like the customary Stanley, and so your force has changed. And honestly, I didn't put a lot of thought into very early, because I'm a woodworker first. I have 50 years of woodworking, and then the collecting, and then the examination of these things. So I didn't realize that all that portions of it were as significant as they are. Now, as I start examining things and doing these comparisons, I realize that I have to. But I've enjoyed your channel, and I do watch your channel when it comes up. I only do a video on mine infrequently. I do it when I have something to say. So, and as I say, I'm not doing it for the money, but I noticed that she doesn't seem to make a living doing it. So my question to you is, at what point does YouTube actually make you money? And I don't want to know, I'm not asking you for your specifics, but I'm thinking in terms of people that want to do this for a living. As you say, it's your business. So how many viewers, or what does it take for somebody to say make a living and support their family? Because I don't make any money on it. So that's my question, is where's that transition, or where's that equation go into your brain of like, okay, I have to support a family. How many do I need to do all of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there really isn't a rule of thumb. It's wildly different. I've known a few people who have been able to transition and make a full living at 8,000 subscribers. And I have known quite a few others that I can't do it until they get over 500,000. It depends on your channel. It depends on your audience. It depends on what other revenue streams you have. Like for me, YouTube is about a fifth of my revenue. And so it's the YouTube AdSense is, for me, a take it or leave it. I mean, it's enough that I'm going to take it, but it is not where I focus my revenue on. Most of my revenue comes from Patreon and YouTube memberships. So the audience, people who want to support what I do, and I like it being that way. And I have not pushed my other revenue streams because I want to keep myself audience supported, so that I whenever I say something, I can say, you know, this is what I want to say because I'm supported by you, the viewers. I don't have to worry about it coming from other places. But that being said, I do also have the affiliate links on Amazon and several other places.
You have also products like Rob Cosman, no?
Yeah, then I have a few things that I sell on my website, and I have plans that ends up being like a eighth or so of what I make. And there's a few other things like that. The more revenue streams you can make, the more balanced you are, and the better chance that something is going to survive if something else drops off. And so whether or not to monetize depends on you. As in, from the viewpoint of the average YouTube viewer, monetization and ads make no difference whether they're there or not. The only people who really think about whether or not a channel has ads or not are the people who are worried about monetizing their own channel. It's something that the average viewer just doesn't really think much about.
I have difficulty with videos that, because I notice on YouTube, you can choose whether or not you allow commercials before, after, or in the middle. And I generally will shut off a video if it breaks for a commercial, because if it has my interest, then it holds my interest. If all of a sudden an insurance ad comes up, I don't wait for that. I just go, okay, I'm done with that, and I move on to another video. That's the type of viewer I am. Mm-hmm. That's not, and I don't come anywhere near. I don't really know what your membership is, but I assume it's much larger. Mine, I think my subscribers are only around 1,600 or 1,500 subscribers. So I'm nowhere near what you, Rob, and several other people. I mean, those you've really done a great job, and I commend you for that. But it's just the ones in the middle just drive me nuts, and I just can't. You know, all of a sudden, and my tendency is to go, okay, I'll go watch something else. I don't mind it if the ads are in the beginning and you can skip them, but in the middle it loses it. But
there's actually a full statistic for that. Right now, it's at about 4.5% of the audience who will jump off if there's an intermediate ad.
Yeah, it takes me away from it. But thank you for the talk, and I commend you on how well you're doing with yours. I enjoy your videos. I think they're very honest, and appreciate them.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jester. Over to Eric.
Hi, James. That was both inspiring and a bit frightening as well. I'm just a on the cusp of trying to raise my head up with my woodworking and actually start trying to do things that people might want to buy. And I'm thinking, right, how do I do this? So I thought, right, I'll get a company name, I'll have a fresh Instagram account, and maybe I put it on Facebook and get a website. And distance myself from it, because I find I'm almost got sort of like multiple personalities. Facebook, I've got a lot of friends that I actually have, flesh and blood friends that I meet. Well, not so much with COVID, but real friends. And I've got virtual friends as well. Instagram, similarly, but I've got quite a lot of virtual friends on Instagram. And with Instagram, I think when you put in the hashtag and put a huge list of stuff, that spreads your site onto, or you onto different bits, and I think might be quite useful. But I don't know. Is it you're saying you get your family gets sort of mixed up slightly sometimes with things because you're not posting stuff on different things. I don't post very much at the moment, but obviously if I'm going to have a website and things, I need to post a lot more. So my advice is it possible to still put yourself into like silos and keep your personal life away from your business life on media?
Yeah, it's possible. It's more work.
There's always a snag.
Yeah, well, in particular, there's a difference. Like if you're wanting to sell what you make, that is a different ball of wax than social media creating a personality. Like for me, I don't sell what I make, mostly because if I make it completely with hand tools, the amount of money I would have to charge for it to be worth my time would be more than the average person would be willing to spend. And so when you're selling things, you have to build a name for the quality of your work and types of things you provide. And honestly, the best place to start that with is friends and family. If you can find, it's starting that ball rolling of that word of mouth. And with making things, there are very few ways to sell efficiently, particularly furniture, that isn't word of mouth. And so in that case, the social media is you tend to keep your business social media and your personal social media mixed a lot longer than you would if you're creating a personality.
All right. Yeah, no, that's useful. I mean, I thought when I get my website up, I'll take photographs of a lot of the stuff that I've already made for friends and family and post it up and put sold beside it, and that will make me seem instantly successful. But whether that will fool many folk or not, I don't know. But I hesitate to say, I wouldn't want commissions, because obviously folk asking you for something is great, but I've dealt with the public before, and the public are swine. They really are. I find it quite difficult, and you do something and you produce it, and it's exactly what you thought they asked for, and they see it and think that's not what I wanted, or it's too big, or it's the wrong color, and stuff. They go, so you could end up getting left with stuff that maybe wouldn't have been your first choice, but. People don't, they've changed their mind, they don't want to buy it. So I'd rather say, here's a beautiful thing I've made, would you like it? And go from that side of things. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things you gotta play it by ear. One of the things you can do when you're selling things that actually works really well is when you post a picture of something you've made, and with the permission of the person you're making it for, say in the post, tag them and say, I'm making this for so-and-so, and we talk about it, and then ask them if they would be willing to share your post. And so you're taking that post from your group and you're putting it in another group, and it makes them feel special because you are showing them that you're making something specifically for them, and then they get to show it off to people saying, ooh, look what I just had made specifically for me.
All right, that's a good idea. I'll steal that one. Thanks very much.
Here's Eric. James, I'm just going to jump in and ask you a quick question before we move on to Simon. And you mentioned right at the start, and you were pretty honest about it, you were never taught woodworking. And you've sort of gone on to, you're obviously self-taught mostly, from what you're saying.
I have to throw a caveat into that. I was never taught like a school or apprenticeship. I grew up in the workshop with my father, who had a hobby workshop. So I've been woodworking since I was 5, but it was never really, I never touched a hand tool until 6 years ago. I was all power tool until then. So that's all been self-taught, but everything else has been with my dad or just hanging out in the shop. It was part of me growing up.
Okay. Well, I don't think that really changes the questions I was going to ask, though, which is I've heard from several woodworking YouTubers who are sort of in that same category, but even one that has actually been to furniture school and been taught through the whole process. And that whole thing about you questioning yourself, teaching woodworking online, do you really have the credentials to do that? And is that a question that you ask yourself? And if so, how do you put your mind at bay and just carry on with what you're doing?
Right off the bat, yes, there was that imposter syndrome of I don't know enough to be teaching. But one of the things you quickly realize is the only thing you need to be able to teach is more knowledge than the person you're teaching. And with woodworking, there are a million things to learn, and I will never learn them all, and I will never be great at even half of them. But there are a lot of aspects to it that I have spent a decent amount of time in, and I feel rather competent in what I'm doing. And there's a lot of people who are brand new to it, and I know more than them. And me passing on that information is the right thing, because if I held back that information because I don't have credentials, then I'm depriving them of what I could be providing.
Fair enough.
Now, in that case, it is always buyer beware. You got to understand the person you're getting information from. But if
your
you trust
audience
them,
will become what it is. So it's not like you're trying to tell professionals or someone else how to do something. You're just telling them how you're doing something, and the people who don't have that knowledge will come to you. And the people that do have the knowledge, hopefully will be polite enough to suggest that they have another way and share it with you and your audience as well. You know, because you will get some people that they just want to fight about it and say, no, this is the way I do it, and that's the way. And those are the ones to be ignored. But there's always passing on information of any level is good.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I really like about the channel I have is my Wood by Wright was started when I bought my first ever hand plane. And my first video is literally bringing it home and setting it on the kitchen counter and saying, hey, look what I just bought. I'm going to start restoring this thing. And at that point, it was just a hobby channel for me, documenting what I was doing. But eventually someone said, hey, how did you do that? And so I created a video explaining how I did what I did. And it just kind of snowballed from that point on. And so as long as one of the problems that I have with a lot of channels, not a lot of channels, but a few channels, is this is the right way to do it. And anytime you start saying that this is the best way to do it, or this is the way to do it, or this is the correct way to do it, that's when you're running into problems. If you say this is how I do it, or this is how I found to be a great way to do it, or this is the best way for me to do it, that is, that's what I like, because there are a million ways to learn anything, and there are a million ways to do anything. And there's a million videos out there that anyone can go and find the video that connects with them and the method that works for them. So as long as you don't make it the best way, I think that's very valuable.
Okay, thank you. I think we're on to the last question from Simon.
Hi, James. Thank you for a good talk.
Hey, Simon.
You kind of covered some of the things I was actually going to ask the question on. First up, my sympathies with your dyslexia. I'm in that club as well. So I feel for you. Sometimes, firstly, I apologize because I haven't seen many. I've seen a couple of your videos, but I haven't seen many. How do you approach how you select the subjects that you're going to work on? And often, how can I put this very gently? I'm not accusing you of this because I haven't seen this with you. Quite clearly, some YouTubers have watched, shall we say, more perhaps famous established woodworkers, and then go onto their channel and repeat exactly the same thing. Yeah. How do you approach what material you select to do, and do you knowingly kind of look at other things out there to try and avoid just repeating a circular kind of?
You know, that's actually kind of a difficult thing, because if something is intriguing me at this time, it's probably also intriguing several other woodworkers out there as well. And you will see waves of a topic coming up, and I will regularly get accused of, oh, you're doing that because so-and-so did it. And no, it's just because that's what's intriguing me. Now, that being said, there are people out there who will just copy another video trying to get the video ranked and trying to get it up. But I think a lot of times it's very, very rarely that. It is more that I have, like when I first got into hand tools, you know, I watched Paul Sellers, I watched Roy Underhill, the Wright shop. I watched, oh, come on. Can't remember his name. You know, I read books on the topic, and there were only like 5 or 6 sources that I got my information from. And so when I started making videos teaching things, I taught what I had learned. And because I had a limited number of sources, it ends up looking like I'm regurgitating exactly word for word what the last person said, when in fact I'm actually explaining what I learned and the method that worked well for me. And so I think that that happens quite a bit, is that there is a misunderstanding of the difference between what I learned from this person and just regurgitating what they say. But as to what do I pick to make sure that I'm trying to pick something that's special to me, is I try and pick, when I'm making my list of topics that I'm working on, I want to pick things that intrigue me.
Right.
And a lot of times that ends up getting me in trouble, because if it's intriguing me right now with what's happening in the world, it probably is intriguing someone else. But if it's not intriguing me, I'm not going to be happy about what I'm writing. I'm not going to have that natural joy that comes across. I'm not going to be creating a video that I would want to watch. And so I try to come at things from my own twisted point of view, but that's not always easy. There's only so many ways you can talk about how to sharpen a chisel.
yeah, quite clearly. I suppose the thing I put on the end of that, because as you said, you've kind of drawn down from whatever those 5 sources are. If you are not taking a particular subject and sort of building on it, adding something that you discovered yourself, do you tend to then sort of credit that person with, not, I don't mean a credit on the video, but a sort of a mention that
if I'm pulling something directly from someone else, I will talk about that I learned from them. Like the ruler trick when sharpening.
Yeah.
The first few times I talked about that, I said, you know, this is the ruler trick which I learned from Rob Cosman. Well, then I got a bunch of people yelling at me saying, well, the ruler trick actually doesn't belong to Rob Cosman, it belongs to
maybe Charles Worth.
There we are. And well, I didn't know that because I learned it from Rob.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big problem. But now, because I've talked about the ruler trick a dozen times in several different videos, do I still say Rob, or do I still say Charles Worth, or do I just not mention it?
If I understand correctly, I think it's even mentioned in even older books predating Charlesworth.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that there is no new method out there. There's new names for things, but everything is just a rehashing or a different methodology of the same thing. And so if I'm learning something, if I learned something from a specific individual and I haven't seen it from other people, I will credit them and say, you know, I learned this from Paul Sellers. I'm doing what he did here. But if I'm continuing making videos over the years, and I've seen it from other places as well, I'm probably not going to keep crediting Paul Sellers with that particular thing, because it's become a part of who I am. It's a part of what I do. And it is something that I've tweaked as I've gone on, or I've seen it done in other places. And so then if I'm doing that ruler trick, and I've talked about it in a dozen different videos, and every time I've told people, I learned this from Rob Cosman, then eventually I come to the point where, I'm doing it slightly different, or I'm doing it on my own method, or I've seen it in other places, and I don't mention Rob Cosman, then I'm running into the problem of the people who haven't seen those other videos. And so it is kind of one of those things of, do you always mention that? But if I mentioned every person that I ever learned something through, my video would be a string of people's names. And there just comes a point where you just don't have to mention it. It is a kindness that is good to do, but it's not necessary. And I think we as a culture need to back off that a little bit and be happy when someone does credit it, but not discount them when they don't. If that makes sense.
You can also run into problems where you credit somebody, or you mention somebody doing something nice for you or teaching you something, and they don't really want to be mentioned on YouTube.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always try to approach the person and say, well, listen, is it okay if I mention that you did this or taught this or whatever? And a lot of times they'll say yes, but other people, I've had people say, don't mention me. And I'm like, okay, so you got to be cautious that way as well.
One of the things I try to do on my channel is I don't know, I've gotten to the point in it where there's very few things that I learn new that I would be like, oh yeah, I learned this trick from this person, because most of what I do is very well wrapped up into who I am and what I do. And so what I try to do is, rather than saying I learned this from this person, being, hey, why don't you go look at this video, because he teaches the same thing in a slightly different manner. And rather than crediting the person I learn it from, credit someone or give a view to someone else that is doing something similar. And that helps two things. Number one, it helps the person I shout out. But number two, it also helps the person who's viewing what I'm doing, because it gives them another option. If they're not quite learning what I'm doing, or it's not quite clicking with them, watching a different person from a different perspective will help them out. And so I'm not as, if I forget to mention someone that I learned something from, I don't sweat over that, but I try to regularly mention other people that are teaching similar things.
Thank you very much, James. Thanks for your time this evening.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, James. And I think we owe you a toast. I think I can say long-term Bench Talk toast, and we raise our bench beverage to you and say thank you. And thank you. Thanks for a brilliant talk tonight.
Yeah, cheers, James. Thanks a lot.
It's been a lot of fun.